Hello and welcome to this edition of Ringside Digest. I'm your host Kirk Day, and in this video, I just wanted to go over the wild card races coming down towards the end of regular season here, towards the playoffs. Just have a look at them. There's a few tight races coming down, might come down to the last game, we don't know. And I also just want to go over a few injury updates that we have. A few players coming back to their teams soon, coming back from injury. But before we get into this video, just make sure to subscribe if you want to see more content from us. It's going to be very exciting coming down towards the playoffs. Only going to be a few days away now as well. And we got the draft, free agency coming in the offseason. It's going to be very fun. We got some exciting stuff coming up. Without any further ado, let's get into our first topic here, which is it's a playoff update, basically. The wild card races, it's been coming down pretty close. There's a few teams that have been tied for the past, few weeks coming down. It might come down to the few last games. They're going to have to play each other. So we're going to go into the first one here, which is the Western wild card. And this is a pretty interesting one because Winnipeg and Calgary are currently playing as I'm recording this video. Last time I checked, Winnipeg was up 1-0. But this is a very, very big game. Calgary lost to Chicago earlier in the week. That's a crucial point loss. That was almost a must-win game for them to beat. That would have been tied with Winnipeg at this point coming into this game. But number 2, 3, and 4, Winnipeg, Calgary, and Nashville. This is a very, very big week, big end of the season coming in for all these teams. Winnipeg and Calgary play now, like I said, but both these teams have to play Nashville before the end of the season. So I wouldn't say Nashville's out of it yet. Even if Winnipeg does win, goes up to 91 points, it's still very, very important that you must win the remaining games you have, especially against each other. So, if Winnipeg wins this game and they win against Nashville, that's a very, very good look for them going into the playoffs. Almost, I wouldn't say secure your spot, but get a higher chance of doing it. You got to get as high as you can right now. Calgary, you can't afford to lose. Nashville, you can't afford to lose. Winnipeg can't afford to lose. As well as Seattle. Seattle, they have a pretty big point spread. 5 points, same amount of games, but you still need to win. You can't afford, you don't want to drop down to number 2 or number 1, just in case something happens, go on a cold streak, someone else gets hot, it might push you out. But it's still very, very important that you do go for your points and what you can get for the rest of the season to get your regular season points. But all these teams, not exactly Seattle, but between Winnipeg, Calgary, and Nashville, they've had their struggles this season. Calgary's had their little coaching issue, I would say. They haven't gotten exactly where they were supposed to be. And Winnipeg as well had that big losing streak. So, anything can happen. And, the outlook might have been different if these had not happened, but it's hockey. It's a game. It's going to happen. But like I said, you need to get these points coming to the end of the regular season. You can't afford to lose at this point. So the coming down, when they play each other, it's going to be some crucial games, going to be some very, very competitive games, and you can't afford to lose. So it's going to be something to watch. It's going to be fun to watch coming down to the end of the regular season. As well, in the same situation, a similar situation with the East, we have the Islanders, the Panthers, and the Penguins, all pretty much within 1 point, and the regulation wins aren't exactly even. I would say Pittsburgh has a bit of a disadvantage, only having 29 regular season wins if it does come down to a tiebreaker situation. But I would say they probably have the easiest schedule out of the 3 teams here. You guys have played Minnesota, which is still going to be a tough game. That one's tomorrow. Going to be a tough game. But between Detroit, Chicago, and Columbus, those are some pretty good teams playing at this point in the season. If you want to get a few points for a wild card push, because we know they're gonna need it. They're gonna need it coming up against the Islanders and Florida. These 2 teams have been pretty hot. Well, all 3 of these teams have, but Florida's very competitive. Matthew Tkachuk, 105 points or whatever, and the Islanders playing a very, very good defensive game. These 2 teams, they don't lose easy. None of these teams do. So if you're Pittsburgh, you gotta win your games because you're not gonna win a tiebreaker with the 29 wins. It's just not gonna happen. They do have the easiest schedule, but still, you have to win because Buffalo's right on their tail. Buffalo's still a few points out of a wild card conversation, but they do have a few games in hand. So if they come on a hot streak, it could be looking dangerous for Pittsburgh if Pittsburgh starts to lose, and either of these teams, the Islanders or Florida, do. It'd probably be a bit unlikely for Buffalo too, but they're still in talks. It's very, very, very unlikely, but I can see something weird happening, and if it does, it wouldn't surprise me. So that's why you have to get your wins at this point in the season. I'll keep on saying it. You got to win the games that you're supposed to win. You got to win them because you need the points. It might come down to 1 point, might come down to the end of the season, might come down to the last game of the season. Either way, you're going to need to do it. But now, as with our last little playoff update here, I just wanted to go over the Central Division, because these three teams, Colorado, Dallas, and Minnesota, they're all currently tied at 98 points. Colorado's a game in hand, but still. And this is not as much of a important situation as trying to sneak into a wild card, as these teams have already clinched. But even having the teams clinched, it's depending on your matchup, because, in this situation, if this was the playoff, if it started like this, Colorado would be playing Seattle, Dallas would be playing Minnesota. Now, I would say Dallas versus Minnesota is the harder matchup than Colorado versus Seattle. So, you can't rest in this situation. I know you can probably rest a player here or there if they're hurt, it's a tough situation to be in, but you want to get your points. You want the easier matchup in Seattle, because if I'm either of these three teams, I don't want to play each other. If I'm Colorado, I don't want to play Dallas or Minnesota. If I'm Dallas, I don't want to play Colorado, Minnesota. If I'm Minnesota, I don't want to play Dallas and Colorado. They're just some tough matchups compared to Seattle, which I know Seattle's still a tough team, but the tougher matchups are certainly Dallas and Colorado. So that's just a little update on the Central. You want to win. You got to get your last few games in. I'm not sure exactly if Colorado, Dallas, and Minnesota are going to be playing each other off the top of my head. I don't have the schedules here. But if they do again, it's a big matchup, because Minnesota just comes off losing 2 against Vegas, those are 2 crucial points. That would have put them pretty clear, would have put them 4 points ahead. But, it's hockey. It's going to happen. And with our second topic here, we have an injury return news. So, there's 2 teams here. One, as we've been talking about right after the trade deadline had happened, Ryan O'Reilly says he looks like he's going to play tomorrow versus Boston, which is huge news for the Toronto Maple Leafs. You go at the trade deadline, get some guys who have had that playoff experience, who've been their team leaders, and he goes out with an injury for pretty much the entire second half of the season. That is a huge loss, but getting him back just before the playoffs, shake off the rust. Ryan O'Reilly probably doesn't have any rust. He's been there, he's done it. He has the experience, but still, just getting the few games in the regular season before the playoffs, coming into a tough matchup versus Tampa, very, very big news for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I would be very, very excited if I'm a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, hearing that news coming back, that hopefully he'll be 100%. You almost want to be versus Tampa, because it's gonna be a tough matchup. It's gonna be gritty. It's gonna be hard hitting. These two teams, I think, are gonna be head to head pretty much the entire time. You got Corey Perry on Tampa, Pat Maroon, and you got guys like O'Reilly to combat that now, and you got Luke Shen. Toronto went out and got some tougher guys because they know it's gonna be a tough matchup. It's gonna be a grueling matchup. So that's big news for the Toronto Maple Leafs. At the final one here we have is Marc-Andre Fleury starts in Pittsburgh tomorrow. That's not the important part. But Kirill Kaprizov and Gustav Nyquist coming on the road trip to skate tomorrow. Very big news for Minnesota. Having these 2 guys come back, we know Kirill Kaprizov went out with an injury when Logan Stanley fell on him, and Gustav Nyquist, acquired at the trade deadline by Minnesota, hasn't played yet for them, but they're both skating. It's a very, very good sign heading towards the playoffs, because Minnesota's played very well without Kaprizov. Matt Boldy stepped up. The entire team has stepped up. But you're not the same team without Kirill Kaprizov. It's a major difference when he does show up. And having Gustav Nyquist as well coming in after the injury, starting to play again, if they both come in for the start of the playoffs, very, very good news for Minnesota. And because we have to have Mason Shaw go out with a torn ACL, I believe it's the 3rd or 4th of his career, which is absolutely devastating. But having these 2 guys come back, if you get Kaprizov, put him back on the top line, if Boldy stays the way he's playing, and you get Nyquist to come down in the bottom 6, it'll be absolutely fantastic heading towards the playoffs, heading into the playoffs, and it'll be a big, big boost for Minnesota. If everybody plays the way they are now, you get the goaltending playing still very good. Be very, very good for Minnesota. Very exciting, and hopefully make it past the second round if we make it past the first. So, yeah, it's big news for both these teams, having Ryan O'Reilly, Kaprizov start coming back from injury, getting into the playoff. You're getting into the playoff groove now. You're getting into... You got to win. Start winning. Get that mentality that this is it. You can't afford to lose in any situation here. So, yeah, it's coming down to the wire now with everything coming down to the wild card races, coming down to the injuries. Everybody's preparing now. It's getting ready, getting your team ready, getting set to have a tough matchup versus whoever you're going to be playing. So that's all we have for this video, guys. And if you liked it, make sure to like the video. Make sure to subscribe, because like I said at the start of the video, we're going to have some exciting stuff coming throughout the playoffs and the off season. We're going to have a playoff predictions video soon when the matchups get set. Me and Nick and Noah, we're going to do one of those. It's going to be very, very fun. It's going to be very exciting coming down as well. We have some stuff planned. It's going to be very fun. And thank you for watching.